I am mixed with a lot of different races. My main race is Chinese and Jamaican. However, I am so much more than only that. On my father's side, I am Jamaican, Chinese, and German. I am pretty sure we are much more than that, but my father doesn't really know what his father is. The most that he knew about him was the fact that he was a white Jamaican. On my mother's side, I am Jamaican, Chinese, Irish, and English. People always hear that Jamaica was an empty island and that all the people that were on the island came from Africa. However, that is not true. There were actually original people on the island. There were not much, but they were there. My mom's side of the family was actually one of the original people that came on the island. Back in the day, being light-skinned on the island was a big thing. There was no doubt that if you were a person with lighter skin, you would get everyone and you were just honored more as a person. On my mother's side, the whole of the family is light-skinned, so light that there were also many white-skin toned people on my mom's side. On my dad's side, they're all brown, none really dark-skinned besides my grandmother. She told me how back in the days she purposely went with a white Jamaican just so her kids can come out with lighter complexion. I'm going to start this story off talking about my mom's side of the story. My mom came from a family of 12, that is 3 brothers and 9 sisters. From that you can only imagine how the house was. Not all of them had the same father, but all had the same mother. However, for the most part, they did not have the same father. My grandmother and grandfather both came from Jamaica. However, my grandfather is Chinese, and for you to truly understand the situation of why a Chinese man would be in Jamaica, you would have to know a little of how Chinese people came in Jamaica in the first place. Back in the day when my grandfather was born, a lot of Chinese people would have fled to other countries trying to make business. My great-grandparents was rich, so on occasion they would go to Jamaica, check on business down there. They had a child and then grew him up in Jamaica. My grandfather learned to love Jamaican women and wanted to stay instead of traveling back and forth. When my great-grandparents realized what was happening, they did not want him to be with a black woman, so they decided to move back to China because they already had a woman that they wanted him to be with. He disobeyed them and said no, and they told him if he were to leave, they would cut him off and dishonor him. So he left. Later to find out he left because he was in love with my grandmother, and she was already pregnant with her first child. However, my grandfather was a player, and even though my grandmother and grandfather loved each other, they were never really ever truly together. But yet most of her children have him as a father. He grew up in Jamaica, so he was Chinese man speaking full out Jamaican, and he was very olive skinned because he used to have to work in the fields, which made his skin darker than most Asian people. My grandmother on my mom's side was original Jamaican from the storyline my aunt told me, but I don't know much since she died before I was born. That was 3 grandparents ago, were white of Irish and English descent. They had sex with their slaves and came out with that side of the family. It is funny because sometimes my cousins come out with like a reddish brown hair. My niece and nephew actually have that color hair. My grandmother from my father's side is pure Jamaican. I am pretty sure that she is a Jamaican that originated from Africa. On my dad's side, there are 3 brothers and 2 sisters, all with the same mother and father. A lot of them have mental issues, and I'm not sure if it is because of how they were raised or because of the loss of their father at such a young age. When my father's side of the family came to America, they were more delayed. They didn't come up until the 90s. An ample amount of my dad's side of the family is still in Jamaica from this day. On my mother's side, there is not that much. However, my grandmother and grandfather stayed and lived in Jamaica until their passing, and my uncle still lives there with his family. My oldest brother moved back to Jamaica 3 years ago. My whole family wishes to move back there after they are retired. They were all beautiful kids, so they all had the looks to get whoever they wanted. The person to leave to America was the oldest sister. She left to become a nurse in America and to help the family situation home in Jamaica. A lot of my aunts say if it was not for her, they probably wouldn't have lived. The older sister stuck by tradition, which was get married, then have her kids. From then, no one else really did it in that way. They all basically went to America in order. They would have kids, leave the kids with my grandmother, and then go to send their kids after. All my aunts moved to Canada besides two. They would stay in America for maybe a year where they can get up on their feet and they would decide to go to Canada. My mom was one of the last of many to come to America. Then coming, they had to wait for my other aunts to ask to come get them. Before them coming to America, my mom had my sister and my older brother. They both were born and raised in Jamaica and did not come to America until their late high school career. When they came to America, they went to New York, where my brother and I were born. First, my brother was born, being born 14 years younger than the two older siblings. Then it was me, being 7 years after my brother. At the age of 2, my mother and father were separated, moving us to Florida for a month. Then we moved to Georgia until I was 8 years old. When I reached the age of 8, I then moved to Rhode Island. I was originally supposed to be moving to Boston, however I complained that I wasn't getting my own room, which ended us in Rhode Island, and we've been here ever since.
Pool party. If I even reach me, I feel reach a summertime. 90 degrees in the shade, temperature turn up. Whitey a tan till skin burn up. Black gyal a rub till